I think one of the best things about Anchor is for somebody that was a little nervous going into their podcast, first recording their podcast experience. It gave me all the tools necessary to record my own podcast. It gave me sound bits. It gave me recording tips. It gave me everything. So I would recommend Anchor to anybody who's a first-time podcaster or a veteran looking to expand their brand. In order to get Anchor, you can either download the Anchor app from the store, from your phone's store or computer store, or also go to anchor.fm to get started. Welcome to the SU Lacrosse Podcast. This podcast is available on Spotify, Apple, Anchor, and any other platform you get your podcast from. If it isn't available, please reach out to me, and I will make sure that it goes on that platform. I'm your host, Dan, season ticket holder for SU. As long as I can remember, been going to SU games since I was a baby. If you enjoy this podcast, feel free to hit the subscribe and or follow button wherever it is possible. A couple things to get to today. As the title says, Pat March, exclamation points, with all kinds of exclamation points. We're going to get to that in a minute. We're also going to talk about some dates and just some upcoming things for the podcast. Let's touch on Pat March first. Before we get into that, last episode we discussed the possible replacements for Kevin Donahue, who stepped down from the offensive coordinator and recruiting coordinator role. He was a huge part of the offense, I'm not going to lie. Even as a fan, you could see what he was running. You could see the type of plays he was running. He stepped down to site, spend time with his family. He's got a couple of grandkids now, so we want to spend time with them. He's got a couple of kids. His daughter, I believe, is a senior at SU, so he wants to be able to spend more time with her. Understandable. I think there's other reasons as well, but that's a couple of the main reasons. So, like I said, last episode we talked about replacements. I listed Will Manny. I listed a couple other names that I can't think of off the top of my head. Matt Abbott, who's playing professionally for the Chesapeake Bayhawks, I believe. One of the names I didn't mention that they ended up hiring was Pat March. To be honest, this was kind of a shocker, but after reading, this was a shocker to me at first, but after reading a little bit more about March, I think I was happy with the hire, to be honest. He has 8 years coaching. He's coached at Vermont. He's also coached at Dickinson College, his alma mater, Roanoke, where he was a 200-point scorer, notching 243 points total on 152 goals and 91 assists. So he was a talented offensive player throughout college, and it looks like it's translated to his coaching game. He also coached at Princeton, which was his most recent stop. In his first season, he ran the offense and also was a recruiting coordinator. In his first season at Princeton, the Tigers made a 50% jump in scoring offense, scoring nearly 15 goals per game. That was in 2017. That squad ranked second nationally in that category, and they also posted the top shooting percentage in the nation. And in the last 2 years, they haven't fallen out of the top 10 offensive-wise. They ranked third, and they also ranked 10th last year. On that offense, though, he had Major League draft picks in Zach Currier and Austin Sims. Both were selected in the first round of the MLL draft in 2017. He also has mentored Michael Sowers, who is one of the best, arguably one of the best, I want to say. Princeton attackman ever to play. Sowers set a program record with points in 2019 for a single season. He had 90 points total, 37 goals, and 53 assists. So he brings the offensive side. On the recruiting side, however, there's a lot more upside, I would say, that I see, that just from the things that I've read, that I'm very excited about, that I want to see translated in Syracuse. He's brought in top-level talent to Princeton, or he had brought in top-level talent to Princeton, after being unranked by Inside Lacrosse, which we'll get to in a minute about Inside Lacrosse, just a general background. And they're being ranked, not ranked. They haven't been in the top 15 in recruiting since 2014. March brought Princeton back-to-back top 12 classes in the last two recruiting cycles. So that's huge. And to go back to Inside Lacrosse for a second, they're the ones who come out with their rankings. I believe it's a top 100 player, top 100 for each position that they run. They host an All-American game. They cover everything lacrosse. They cover pro lacrosse. They cover everything. So they have their own podcast. So I would say feel free to I would cross-promote with them. Feel free to go listen to that. It's very informative. They have a couple guys that they rotate, but it's very good. They talk about the pro game. They talk lacrosse all year, which is what I love. So that's huge. I mean, I love, after reading what I read about March, I'm very excited. I want to see what he does. I mean, now he went from Princeton, who was very good in the late 90s and early 2000s, and kind of has shown back up on the map more recently. He comes to a university in Syracuse that has one of the best alumni backing in the country in lacrosse, in my opinion. And he comes to one of the best programs in history in lacrosse. Plus, he's got a fan base that is loyal, that is rabid. I'm not saying that any other fan bases are rabid, but I'm just saying Syracuse lacrosse fans are different. We live and breathe lacrosse. We live and breathe the program. We follow it everywhere we go. We follow it on the road. We do it every time. So I can say, as somebody who's watched the games, I'm very excited to watch March. I'm very excited to welcome him into the SU Lacrosse family. One of the other things I wanted to get to today, there's a couple important dates. But first, unleashing a new segment today that was suggested by one of my friends. It's called the 22 cent segment. He said, Dan, you say 22, you say 2 cents. Why not say 22 cents to honor the 22 at Syracuse? Tie it into it a little bit. So my 22 cents for today is about Pat March. And I think, given the things that I read, and given numbers that I've seen, I say March will turn this team into an offensive juggernaut. Because if he can do that at Princeton, imagine what he can do with the backing of the alumni, the community, everything at Syracuse. So that's how I feel. That's my 22 cents. Let's get to some dates, though, coming up for the fans and the program, but I say more so the fans, because I think as a fan, I want to see how my team looks going into fall camp. Just like a spring scrimmage in football, I see fall camp as a fall ball scrimmage for lacrosse fans. They can go watch their team. They can see guys who may not contribute right away, but at some point in the year may contribute. So, and they also can watch some scrimmages with other teams. They can see how other teams look. They can do some analysis of that. The first date that we're going to get to, though, is October 5th. And there's a game that will be played at SUNY Cortland between Syracuse and Denver. For those who don't know, Cortland is about 45 minutes outside of Syracuse. It's also, and I just found this out earlier today, it also has a very famous alumni that coaches at Denver, and Bill Tierney. I think that's part of the reason why Syracuse and Denver will be playing at Cortland. I think that's huge for the university because they can promote it. Look, our alumni is coming back. They've also got a couple other alumni that are coming back. Tierney is the name that people know. So they can say, look, Tierney's coming back to coach. Come out and watch. Support the university, whatever. That game is at 7 p.m. on October 5th. I would urge every lacrosse fan in the area to go to it, as Cortland has a very good, very nice stadium field there. I've been multiple times. I can honestly say it is one of my favorite outdoor venues for a D3 school. Back to Tierney, though. He's also going to be honored during the weekend. Don't really know what they're going to do for him. I've just been told that he's going to be honored. Or have heard that he's going to be honored, I should say. And he's also co-hosting a camp with Desko. John Desko, for those who don't know, is the head coach lacrosse at Syracuse University. I think it's great for the game having two coaches that I would consider in my top 10 all time. Both. I would say they were my top 10. Desko's obviously one of my favorites as an SU fan, but Tierney is one of the absolute best to call the game and coach the game. They're co-hosting a camp in Cortland, and I think that's huge for the game. Like I said, you get two coaches that everybody knows. Everybody in the area is going to know John Desko. Everybody out west is going to know Bill Tierney. So that's gonna attract some kids that probably wouldn't go, per se, because you're also going to have the Denver players there, so that's going to help. Kids that go to the camp can talk to these players. Kind of get their feeling. Talk to these coaches, get some advice on how to improve their game. Watch these guys play. I mean, it's an all-out win. It's a it's a win-win for the university because Cortland gets free promotion out of it. But it's also a win. It's also a win for Syracuse and Denver, who, if you look at their alumni, you've got their alumni all spread out. You've got alumni in Atlanta for Syracuse and Liam Banks, who is the head coach of the Atlanta Blaze, who actually was Pat March's head coach last year when March coached for the Blaze, and they led the MLL in the offensive categories. But that's the one name that I think of. There's other names, obviously, but that's the name that I think of. So that's a very good event. I'd say attend. I definitely will be in attendance. I can say that. I definitely will be there. Wouldn't miss it. Especially being that my parents both attended Cortland. So, just a little added thing to that. So, a couple other dates to get to. October 19th is probably one of my favorite dates of all time. No, it's not my birthday. No, it's not anybody else's birthday. It is the annual Syracuse lacrosse alumni game. In years past, they've done the orange and white squad. I don't really know what the names of the teams are doing, what the names of the teams are going to be, or anything like that. But I can tell you, as a fan of the game, I love seeing guys from 2000s, from the early 2000s, from the 1987s. I believe we saw a guy, there was a guy listed in the program last year from 1960, I want to say, or some insane number that he was playing in, but he played in the game. So that's part of the reason for me as a fan. I like seeing all those guys, reliving all the history, seeing the guys watching guys that play pro now, go on the field, play on the field, guys that have gone on who don't play the game anymore but are still that good where they can run out and score 10 goals or something. So I'm very excited to see some players that I know or that I remember, and also to see some names that I don't really remember from years past playing. That game is actually starting at noon Eastern, and following that is another favorite of mine, the inter-squad scrimmage. Besides the game at Denver on October 5th, this is going to be the first time to see the team. You're going to see some names that you don't remember. Guys that redshirted last year, guys that were third strings. You're going to see some of those guys playing a lot because this is going to be a full field inter-squad scrimmage. They're going to stop the game. They're going to work on some things. They're going to go over some things. But in general, it's just a great experience for the fans. Tickets to this and the alumni game, so you get both. You get $10. It's $10. And you don't have to pay for parking. Win-win. $10 gets you in for both games. So I would highly recommend anybody in the Syracuse area who hasn't gone or has gone in years past, go this year. You're going to really enjoy it. We're going to have a couple podcasts on after that where we discuss thoughts from the alumni game, thoughts from the inter-squad scrimmage, thoughts from the Cortland scrimmage, just thoughts from fall ball camp in general as fall ball comes to an end and we start to get ready for the spring. One of the other dates that I want to point out is I kind of got it circled on my calendar. It is December 18th. Right around there, the schedule will get released. We're going to have a schedule episode where we talk about some teams that Syracuse travels to that we've never seen them travel to. One name is Albany. Syracuse has always hosted Albany in the past. This year, they're going to travel to Albany. Part of that is because of the dome construction. I think a big part of that actually is the dome construction and the fact that Albany wants Syracuse to go there. So that's huge. One thing I'm looking forward to, in general in this podcast, is I have somebody who I interact with on social media. Looking to have him on at some point. Won't mention his name. I want to build some suspense with that. But somebody who I interact with on social media, who is a former SU player, I consider him somebody that I look up to. We're about the same age. I think we actually are the same age. But I consider him an idol of mine. The things that he's done in his lacrosse career and out of his lacrosse career, I'm just going to tell it out for you. It's Jovan Miller. Somebody who I absolutely respect. So I've been back and forth with Jovan a little bit. And I'm trying to just line up some timelines. He has told me we're just going to line it up and we're going to talk some lacrosse. Because I want to get his thoughts on the state of the program, being a former player, while also looking forward to the future of the program. Give him I know he watched every game. I know he watched the games last year. We interacted a lot during the games last year. I want to get his thoughts going into this year. Kind of see where he's at. And kind of see what he thinks this team can do. And all that stuff. Kind of get it caught up on his life as well. I know he's done a lot of things outside of the game. So I want to kind of give everybody a sight into what he's done. So I'm truly looking forward to that. Once again, I'm trying to set up the date and get that all set up. So I hope you'll enjoy the ride. I hope you'll enjoy that interview when it happens. Interview, co-host show, whatever you want to call it, because I'm going to kind of interact with him a little bit, but let him tell his story. He does host a podcast now called Give It Context. Give a shameless plug to that for him. Honestly, it is one of my favorite podcasts to listen to because it discusses issues from a college athlete standpoint, a pro athlete standpoint, as he has played in the pro game, he's played college. It discusses a lot of life things that people need to listen to that relate to sports, but he relates them back to life. He relates them anywhere he needs to. So I give him all the credit in the world for that. Once again, if you haven't listened to that, go listen to that. A shameless plug for him, as I always will, because like I said, I consider him an idol. I also consider him a friend, given the discussions that we've had. So, if you want to reach out to me on social media, my social media on Twitter and Instagram is Cuse1987. If you want to just discuss any podcast that you listen to, I'm open to anything, guys. So if you want to listen to anything, if you want to discuss anything that you listen to, want some advice on how to produce horrible podcasts, reach out to me. We'll talk. So, like I said, my Twitter and Instagram is Cuse1987. But I want to thank everybody for listening. Once again, if you could hit that subscribe and or follow button wherever you're listening to this. And also, hit the share button. Because you guys don't know how much the share means to me. It truly means the world when I see somebody post an Instagram story, sharing somebody's podcast, promoting it, whatever they do. Like that helps people like me that do podcasts so much. More than you'll ever know. So I want to thank everybody for listening. And go Orange. All right. Have a good day, people.